And doing thousands of workshops on this nature, what do you think is the most common response when we ask that question? You'd hope so, wouldn't you? No. The most common response we get is, yeah, not too bad. Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. Normally, my life sucks, but today is a good day, and it's not too bad. Every other day is rubbish. Today is not too bad. Now, I'm not asking you to lie about how you're feeling and say, I'm feeling fantastic. You don't feel very good at all. But let's think very carefully before we give that throwaway line. So my instant first challenge to you today is when you leave this workshop at lunchtime and you go out into the big bad world, you ask someone that question. If they say, yeah, not too bad, say, so really, how bad is your life normally?
The initiative behind International Day of Happiness was actually came from a small country in the Himalayas called Bhutan, who it turns out, their citizens, their communities, are deemed to be some of the happiest people in the world. And so it got me thinking, what is it about these people that makes them so happy? Is it because they've got the latest iPhone? Perhaps it's because they've got the fastest car. Perhaps they're just financially incredibly wealthy. Or is it because they have completely stress-free working environments? I think it was a few months ago now, went to pick up my 6-year-old daughter Grace from school. And as we were walking back to the car, she turned around to me and she said, Daddy, I feel really happy today. So I said, that's lovely. I said, why do you feel very happy today? And she said, because I want to. Now, I want to. Now, of course, clearly I understand and I acknowledge that Grace's definition and interpretation of happiness differs from mine and also from yours. Although that's the case, there seems to be one unifying factor when it comes to happiness. Despite our age, gender, despite and across all cultures, the unifying factor is that when people are happy, they recognise it and they appreciate its benefits. I did a little experiment and I decided that I was going to do my own little bit of research. So the challenge I gave myself was to ask 100 random people, primarily at this club, 100 random people, what is your secret to happiness? And I got some very interesting answers. Now, typically the first response was, oh, I don't know. Oh, I don't know. I don't know what my secret to happiness is. So I said, being a coach. I understand that you perhaps might not know at this time, but if you were to know, if you didn't know, what might you say? Just maybe know their answer. But they come up with some really interesting answers, and here are the most common. You see, everyone giggled because they noticed that top right straight away. People that were very quick to identify what doesn't make them happy. Oh yeah. So what's your secret to happiness? Well, I'll tell you what makes me unhappy, actually. Okay. It's fine, but what's your secret to happiness? Some people actually turned around and one person, in fact, at this club, turned around when I said, what is your secret to happiness? Said, well, I'm not actually a really happy person. No, I'm not a happy person. So I said, would you like to be a happier person? Yeah, I suppose. I guess what I concluded from that was that the subject of happiness is something that everyone's interested in. I'd ask a group of people, walk away, and walk back past them 10 minutes later, and they're still engaged in a conversation about happiness, what it is. And, as I kind of try and listen in from time to time, we noticed that people were trying to persuade or dissuade people that, well, that can't be right. How come that makes you happy? What are you talking about? But what I concluded was that it's a very emotive subject, and people are engaged in the subject of happiness.
When we first put it out there on email and said, hey guys, what do you think about running a happy workshop? We got some very strange responses. We were called things like freaks and happy, clappy, mumbo jumbo, psycho babble. evangelists, hippies, and various other derogatory comments. But despite that barrage of insults, we thought, no, we're going to keep giving it a go and we'll see what happens. So, let me give you some facts about happiness. Contrary to common belief, happiness is not about getting together with like-minded people on a hillside at dawn, dancing around like a rain of freaks. Neither is it necessarily you devoting your entire life to a religious sect or cult. You do not have to be in a trance-like, drug-induced situation, although some people do think that helps. The fact of the matter is, it's just something we all want, and we're exposed to it every single day, whether we know this or we don't. Organisations, companies are using the term happiness in all their marketing and advertising. Here's a selection. This organisation claims that their hens are so very well looked after, you actually get to eat happy eggs. Now this next organisation claims inside their bottle of fluid is happiness, you can drink it. And perhaps the most famous international franchise ever is this one. The Happy Meal. Putting a plastic toy in a box does not a Happy Meal make. You think that 1 in 3 under 9-year-olds in this country are clinically obese? Maybe. Who remembers? Some of you might be old enough like me to remember this advert. Happiness is a cigar called Hamlet. Happiness is a cigar called Hamlet. It was back in the 80s, you know, when it was a really cool place to be around. Back in the 80s, and typically the advert was a man, because only men smoke cigars apparently, went through some kind of discomfort or some displeasure, and of course they'd say, you know what, I just opened a packet of cigars and smoked one. Then that came as explaining, remember that? Yeah, everything was okay, it was all good, it's fantastic, yeah. Well, years later, the same source of happiness has got a health warning on it. It says now, it not only will harm you, but those around you. And most recently, this great source of happiness will kill you. Who remembers this little chap? Oh. Who's read this story recently? Come on, hands up. No, just me then, okay. Actually, what he tries to do is go around us for a bit of happiness. But we still get really weird feedback when we try to talk about happiness. Oh, it's all about happy stuff. Now, take this on to a more modern day view. Happy feet. Oh my goodness, it's so nice. And this was so popular, especially with children. Now, I'm also a governor of a school, and we also run a half-day insect day for schools called Can You Teach Happiness? And the reason we do this is because so many schools are saying they want to have happiness in their vision statement, in their curriculum. So we then pose the question, well, can you teach happiness? And the answer very simply is yes. There's a whole lot more to deal with than just that simple answer, yes. So of course, after Happy Feet 1 came the pre-teen version, Happy Feet 2, and here's some more selections. This organisation, Itsu, mainly in London, if you eat in that place, you get both health and happiness. This organisation here delivers happiness. I'm not quite sure what's inside the box, but apparently they deliver happiness. You can choose some happiness, you can play on app with happiness, and that organisation that has it in a bottle has it in a convenient can format as well. So basically, we're exposed to it every single day. And as Grant mentioned, the first World Happy Day was 2 years ago, 20th of March. And we put this on as an example, and it had great response. I'm often challenging people in businesses about the term happiness. And we talk to thousands, I do mean thousands, of HR directors and say, you know, happiness. They go, it's just that word, Simon, happy. I say, well, you have two options. Change the word or get over it, because it isn't going away. I asked one MD 2 years ago, you tell me someone who does not want to be happy. You know what he said? What you heard those people say is, I want to be happy. You ask 100 people, as Grant did, what they want out of life, they will say in some way, shape or form, to be happy. Let's break it down. To be happy. Does that mean they're not happy now?
They're all smiling.
Yeah, but they say, I want to be happy. So the question is, what actually is happiness? And if we're not quite sure what it is, are we on a journey that has no definition? We're constantly searching for something that we're never actually going to get. So today, if you get nothing else out of this session, I hope you'll go away with a very clear definition for yourselves personally, what happiness actually is and what it means.
Some people, in terms of their definition, so ancient Greek philosophers such as Aristotle said a fulfilled life was a happy life. Other philosophers argued that they focused more on moral goodness, and they asked the question, what gives people happiness? And they concluded that it's our actions that actually can be judged by how much pleasure they yield for an individual or a community. And Gandhi said, the happiness of an individual should not be built upon the unhappiness of others. But is happiness a destination? And if it is, how do we get there? If happiness is the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. And I think the key point with that particular message there, or that particular video clip, was that happiness generates success as opposed to being the result of success. Happiness generates success as opposed to being a result of success. Someone alluded to it earlier on, I'll be happy when I get my new job or promotion. I'll be happy when I get a new car. I'll be happy when I get my own house. Not quite the case according to the research. Happiness generates success as opposed to being the result of success.
Table 2 in the middle there. Can you three from your table?
Good weather.
Whether that's you, Sarah?
Making others happy. I guess job satisfaction.
That's it, thank you.
Other people laughing.
Laughing.
Well, other people laughing.
Well, there's two. Other people laughing and laughing.
Laughing?
Yeah. Because that's two aspects. Give me two more. Chocolate, Sarah, that's definitely your chocolate. Sally, friends, that's one there, great. Everyone's here.
Yes. Nature.
Nature. There, yes?
Dancing.
Got that already, it's here. What other thing? Anything else, okay?
Yes, writing.
The first one is the one that Sarah was flip charting up there, and that's called immediate gratification. Now, the definition of immediate gratification is very intense sensation, but often short-lived. Let's review the list. Exercise, activity, weather, sex again, listening to music, laughter. Let's pick laughter, because it's an easy, comfortable word to pick. It's not laughter. If you laugh for too long, what happens? You cry the opposite to laughing. If you laugh for too long as well, how do you feel? Tired, and jaw aches and belly aches. It can hurt you. So definitely it's a very short, intense sensation, but doesn't last very long. In organisations in the world, you've got things like pay increases or bonuses. Yeah, it's all well and good, but you get this kind of effect going on. Yeah, what's next? In life, chocolate, alcohol, all these kind of things, it's all well and good. It gives you a high, followed by a low. Smoking is a great example, absolutely. So, I mean, we're not saying it's a bad thing, it's a very good thing, but let's focus not just on the easy, immediate things that perhaps give us that instant high. The second category is known as achievement or achievement gratification. The definition of this is it lasts a bit longer. How many of you can have a show of hands who have done qualifications for the job that you do? Show of hands. Okay, how many of those of you who've got a driving licence? Okay, right. So you've all done a test. You've all done some kind of studying, some kind of learning, some kind of effort, and therefore I'm hoping the idea is you earned that qualification, you got that piece of paper, you got that licence. And therefore it's something that you had to work hard to achieve. This could be summed up as level of pride. How many of you remember being children and perhaps, I'm not sure what era, I remember vividly saving stupid amount of crisp packets when I was a child, and I ate my body weight in crisps to save up to get that really, really lovely, crappy plastic toy. Yeah, well, it doesn't that. Yeah, that one. You then have to save it all up, put it in a stamped envelope. For those who are too young, see me after. Stamped envelope. Yeah. You're there. Right. Okay. And then you had to wait 28 days for it to arrive. So when he got there, I was like, yes, look at this, a crappy plastic toy. But it says on your shelf forever, doesn't it? Unfortunately, now we have a generation of people who don't understand the idea of saving and waiting and waiting. I'm not blaming anybody, I'm just stating a fact that you all know is correct. We don't want to wait anymore. And unfortunately, when we work with schools, we say this quite openly. Please make sure as schools you don't give rewards on sports day. You don't give a medal for everyone who finishes. You're not preparing children for the real world. Because when it goes to the real world, you don't just get a medal for turning up. You get a medal for winning. And every child has got a strength to find and to play. But it's us helping that child find those strengths. And the third and final category we'll talk about today, very briefly, is called enduring happiness or sustained happiness, a longer lasting level. And it typically involves other people. So, for example, it's things like giving, things like charity, things like making other people happy, seeing other people happy. Perhaps going back to nature, perhaps learning to forgive someone and say, what's the point of harbouring negativity against this person? I'm asking you to be a doormat and be walked over, that's not what I'm asking to do, but perhaps learn to forgive and help other people. So these are the three main categories of happiness.
With that in mind, positive psychologists have collected all the data and they've actually come up with a formula to happiness, believe it or not. And here is the formula. Okay. Now, recently, I think it was the start of the week in fact, I posted on my Facebook page, okay, here is the scientifically grounded formula to happiness. H equals S plus C plus V. And just left it there. And you know, reminded people about the workshop today. And just left it there. And within 20 minutes, I had the first answer. And someone put, is it happiness equals Stella, champagne and vodka? Let me explain this in a little bit more detail. So of course, enduring happiness equals set point. Now set point is the capacity of happiness that we're born with. So it's our genetic predisposition, our base level of happiness. The happiness level that we will return to. Okay, so our genetic predisposition to happiness. C represents our circumstances. So this is our environment where we live, what we do. Are we married? Our status, our health, our wealth. And V is visual activity, and this is the choices that we make that affect our happiness, either in the immediate happiness or in the long term. So our choices, our volitional activity. Who believes that money can buy happiness? Show of hands if you believe money, yes, can buy happiness.
Well, I'll give a yes over here, so they're over there.
Okay?
So amount you need,
So
yes.
how about those people making buy happiness?
High up, raise your hands who believe money can buy happiness.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people. So I'll give it.
You got yes.
We started at death and I say yes.
We started to death.
Quick show of hands, who believes no, money cannot buy happiness?
In enduring basis, yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10.
And hands up those who don't put your hands up. Hey! Good job. Okay, right, here we go. There was some research done, I think it's about 6 years ago now, in a Canadian university. And they tried this experiment. They took 2 random students, and they said, in this envelope is 20 Canadian dollars each. Before I give this to you, please give us a rating out of 10 of how happy you feel. And they gave a rating out of happiness. Fold it up, here's your envelope. person A, you must only spend that $20 on yourself, and you've got 8 hours to do it. You come back in 8 hours' time, and we'll see what happens. Person B, same envelope, $20, you can only spend it on other people, you cannot spend it on yourself. Same thing, 8 hours, come back, and see what happens. Interesting enough, they both came back, it was quite a result. And as a result of it, they said, right, now let's re-rate their happiness. And the person who spent it on themselves, there was no increase in happiness. The person who spent it on somebody else or other things, a significant increase in happiness. So these students said, well, let's do this again and again and again. And they did it in Canada, in university, and said, well, maybe it's just Canadian students. Then did it in Canada, thought it was just Canadians. Then North America, just North Americans. They did it around the world for many, many years. And they found statistically the same results. The people who spent money on themselves, insignificant increase in happiness. Those on the people, a significant increase in happiness. So we have run this experiment ourselves, and we're going to do it again right now. Some of you may have been a bit shocked to find that the this afternoon's workshop is free, but this morning you had to pay for it. Nobody here benefits from that payment. You all should have in your presence a ticket, either a member or a non-member, that represents the money you spent to come to today's workshop. In front here, there are 2 boxes with 2 charities. One is Great Ormond Street Hospital, and the other is Macmillan Cancer Support and Nursing. You now have a few minutes to place your ticket in one of those 2 boxes, and what we will do is we will write a cheque to those charities and explain what we did at this experiment. We did this the last time we ran a workshop like this, and we got lots of thanks back, and I said, no, please, you can't thank us. Let me explain what we did. And they were blown away by the idea of doing this as a workshop. So no one's judging whatever box you put it in, because it's entirely your choice. That's a choice again. Please, in the next 1 minute, come up to the front, place your ticket in those boxes, and then back to your seats. Can I instantly ask you to go back to your happiness rating right now? And let's see if the experiment carries on. You all did a happiness rating, how happy you were when you came this morning. Let's go back to that and see if that has slightly shifted up or down or stayed. So it seems to be when we compare down, it's a whole different perspective. How many of you watched Sport Relief on TV last night? Okay? Some harrowing images, some bad stories, and often we think, hey, what have I got to worry about? These people are surviving through, or sometimes not, unfortunately, through very, very difficult conditions, and I'm worrying about the weather, or how much I'm getting paid, or someone jumped in the queue and saying something in front of me. So when you compare down, it seems to be a whole different perspective, but when you compare up, it seems to be a lot worse.
So I'm going to invite you now to inflate your balloon, and do not tie it in a knot. Okay, so you're going to inflate your balloon, and you're going to inflate it to signify how happy you were when you woke up yesterday morning. So you woke up in the morning, you then went downstairs, and you perhaps made yourself some breakfast, and then you switched on TV, and you started to watch the news, as you do most mornings perhaps. Typically, do you hear on TV or on the radio or in your car or whatever? What typically do you hear? Does it might do. They display their little listen to this death instruction on TV and a radio. And then you jump in your car and you commute to work. Then you get to work and you say, hi, how are you? And someone says, yeah, not too bad. And then you bump into, you know the person, Henry the Mood Hoover. Do you know the person that's only ever happy when they're spreading negativity? You're in their company just for a few minutes and you're like, oh, jeez. I haven't even started work yet. The point I'm making is, of course, that we need to spend time proactively and with initiative, re-inflating our happiness as the day progresses, because things will influence, and we will allow things to influence our levels of happiness.